Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
Well, actually, neither Mike Alexander nor Jonathan Wilson are here tonight. This is Josh Jacobs, co-host of the show. Mike is on the East Coast this weekend. In fact, he's been there his entire Thanksgiving, and hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And there's a lot to be thankful for today, as well as every day here in this greatest country on God's green earth. Now, this weekend's going to be a special Radio Free Los Angeles because about a month ago, we kicked off the California School Choice Kickoff Rally and Town Hall at Riley's Farm in Yucaipa. We had some wonderful food and some wonderful speakers. Now, we can't share the food with you because it's over the radio, but we've got the great speakers. We'll be hearing from them. The crowd of about 100 people were there. It was wonderful. And so you're going to get to hear what our guests got to hear about a month ago. I want to get to our first speaker that evening. Her name was Rebecca Friedrichs. She's a school teacher and Prager University host and founder of our Kids for Kids and Country, a national movement of parents, teachers, students, faith leaders, and citizens united to restore our schools and culture. Working for 28 years in the public schools, Rebecca was forced to fund state and national teachers' unions, whose politics and divisive tactics degraded her profession, our schools, and our national character. Her 2016 lawsuit argued before the U.S. Supreme Court was Friedrichs versus the California Teachers Association, which sought to free teachers from forced unionism. Now poised to rule 5-4 in Rebecca's favor, the court deadlocked after the sudden death of Justice Antonin Scalia. However, she was not going to give up. The 2018 decision of Janus versus American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees ruled in favor similar to what Rebecca sought. Her book is called Staying Up to Goliath, Battle State and National Teachers Unions for the Heart and Soul of Our Kids and Country. It's told through dozens of powerful and personal accounts, and it's Rebecca's expose of bully unions. Her speech at last month's event at Riley's Farm explains why the California Teachers Association Union lost only 18,000 members this past year, despite the Janus ruling. By the way, if you'd like to contribute to California School Choice, go to californiaschoolchoice.org. That's californiaschoolchoice.org. Sign that petition right now. And also, if you'd like to, give us a donation, whether it be $5, $50, $100, $500, or $1,000. And right now, here's Mike Alexander to introduce our first speaker.
Rebecca Friedrichs, everyone. Thank you. Oh, by the way, as we were talking ahead of time, we talked about where we're going to do the big kickoff. I said we're going to do it in Huntington Park, California, where I was born and grew up, only to find out that she, too, was born in Huntington Park. So we have a connection we didn't know about.
Same hospital.
Same hospital, Mission Hospital.
Same year.
Oh, no.
Our mothers were in the same room.
1962?
Hey, you just made me older than I really am. Thanks a lot. We were friends until then. Hey, everybody. First of all I can say, Mike, is preach it, brother. Everything he was just saying, I concur 100%. And give him a clap. He was great. My favorite quote, if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say it before. My favorite quote, spoken by Henry David Thoreau, who was an amazing writer. We used to study him in our schools before the unions came in and took out all of our great education. And that quote is, "There are thousands hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root." And I'm always telling people, look, we can fight all day at all these branch issues, all the problems we have in our state and country. We can fight about the gas tax. We can fight about the sex ed. We can fight about whatever. Or we can dig out the root. And the root is the corruption of these unions and these corrupt politicians and their friends who have infiltrated our schools and all of our government agencies. So whenever President Trump says the deep state or whatever he calls it, I always think of the unions and their friends. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to outsmart the unions and their deceitful messaging. Because let's face it, we've been fighting for school choice in this state for a long time. Whether it was vouchers or whatever way we fought, and we keep losing. And we keep losing by the same margin. Have you noticed that? Exact same margin. So we need to flip that margin in our favor. So today I'm going to talk to you about some ideas I have on how we can do that. And I was telling Mike, we all need to get together with a few key minds from all the angles, and we need to we need to create a war room and create our war, our map, and how we're going to fight these people. So here's some ideas for you today. Number one, we need to understand the enemy and not be afraid to expose that enemy. So the enemy in our schools is the unions. Couple of things. Even the messaging on what they call themselves. They claim they are teachers' unions. They are neither teacher, they are neither union. Union's positive, right? They were the good guys in the Civil War. So they use that good name and confuse people. They use the name of teacher and confuse people. No, they're a political action committee for a radical leftist socialist communist agenda. Period. Period. We cannot be afraid to call them that. So what we have to do is realize that the quote teachers union is not teachers. It's unions masquerading as teachers, using my profession to push their agenda. We also need to remember that the unions have planted activist, quote, teachers in every school in America. So there are some bad teachers. And the unions defend the bad ones. You know that. The good ones keep leaving. We have to stop that. We have to get the bad ones out and keep the good ones in. So those bad ones are there to squash and manipulate the great ones. So what do the unions do? This is the main thing I want you to remember about unions. They divide and conquer. They've divided parents and teachers and kids, administrators, and everyone's divided, right? Don't let them do it anymore. Expose them, bring us back together. Second thing, the unions use specific messaging to teachers that has been deceiving teachers for decades. Have you noticed that teachers are not on board with the school choice fight? Have you noticed that? In bulk. Some teachers, the ones who see the truth, they're behind us. A lot of them fight against us. I want to tell you a story. One of the best teachers I know, I won't tell you her name, outstanding teacher. She was a GATE student as a kid. She was at college on a scholarship. She's a strong Christian. She has 3 little children. She wants school choice for her kids. Here's what she told me one day. Rebecca, why are you fighting for charter schools? They're bad. They're not good for the kids. And she starts listing all the evils of charter schools. Every single one was a union talking point. She didn't know she was being deceived. So most teachers only hear one side of the story. The unions make sure that we have constant chaos in our schools, bad discipline, Common Core, you name it, okay? So teachers are exhausted and they're hunkered down and they only hear one message, the union message. Here's the union message. I'm just going to give you some highlights. This is why teachers aren't with us and why we need to educate them and bring them to our side because they are natural allies to us. They're telling teachers that in choice situations, 1, kids are not safe. 2, special needs kids are not being serviced. 3, unqualified teachers are in choice schools, including homeschools, and that homeschooled kids don't get enough, time with other kids. They're told that choice schools get the top kids and public schools get all the problem kids. So that makes public school teachers look like we're not any good. They're told that choice advocates like you and me hate teachers, that we're against teachers. And by the way, I've heard all these arguments during teacher union meetings we're all forced to attend because they happen right in the middle of our staff meeting every week. So teachers are hearing this constantly. Teachers are told that choice is draining money from public schools, that choice leaders are making money off of kids, and that we're all evil, that somehow public schools are the only legitimate schools, even though our schools were never public at the beginning of this country. That's all, the unions have twisted that too. That if choice wins, teachers will lose their jobs, their pay, their pension, all their security. In other words, they won't be able to feed their own kids or pay their mortgage. The unions make it very personal. They're very underhanded. Teachers are told that choice people like you and I, are blaming teachers for all the poor performance in America's schools. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. The unions also corrupted the PTA. I have a whole chapter on this in the book. They, in the 60s and 70s, bullied the PTA so extreme at the state and national levels that the PTA had to take a stance of neutrality. So now PTAs, parents at the local level don't know this. They're just working hard for their kids. Most of the dues money goes up. And these parents are never allowed to take any stance against the teacher union stance. That's why you see parents out picketing during teacher strikes. That's why you see parents very confused about school choice. If you talk to a PTA president mom, someone very involved in PTA, they'll likely be against school choice. They've been manipulated and deceived. The unions have also corrupted the Libraries Association, the School Board Association, every association. Corrupted all the way around our schools. The unions are guilty of every lie they tell about you and me. But teachers don't know that. They're deceived. So, because teachers don't know, teachers keep doing things against their own benefit, against their own profession, against their own students. It is truly diabolical. That is the best word I can come up with to describe the unions. What's the true heart of teachers? Teachers are our natural allies. They are our friends, not our foes. So especially if you're writing about this subject, or if you're speaking on radio, or speaking out anywhere on this subject, never, 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 never say anything negative about teachers. Never. Okay, and I'm going to teach you some ways to do that. Here's what teachers really want. Teachers want choice for their own kids, and most of them get it. Teachers want safety, superior education, and success for all kids. And they're frustrated when they see kids who aren't getting it. They're frustrated when bad teachers are protected too. Here's the problem. Teachers only hear the union side of the story. So they believe the lies. They do not know that the only reason all kids aren't getting those great things is the unions. And they think that choice is the problem. So in other words, we need to educate teachers. They just don't know better. Okay. Now, flipping the ratio. We keep losing by the same ratio. How do we flip it? How do we get the 60% in our favor and the 40%, well, hey, how about 100% in our favor? Because we're right. Okay? And I loved Mike's prayer. We have God on our side. There is no doubt. We're fighting for good. We're fighting for what's right. We're fighting against evil. So, okay, we've got all the right things on our side. Now we just have to flip those people in the middle who are deceived, the teachers, the PTA parents of the world. So we have tried for years to win this race with the exact same messaging. What do we need to change? Our message. Message, message, message. We must focus our message from, don't shoot me. We have got to quit leading with test scores. Not saying that we don't talk about test scores. Not saying that we don't use that as proof along the line. Very proud of test scores at the charter school my husband's president of. Very proud. But we don't lead with that. We lead with compelling stories. Okay? Well, yeah, somebody gets it. Must be John Barry. He gets story. We lead with compelling stories. What kind of stories? Stories that highlight great teachers, vulnerable, needy kids, and evil, corrupt unions. I'm going to tell you one right now. This is a story in my book. Little girl named Nicole. She lives here in Southern California. Nicole was getting all D's and F's. She was depressed. She was wearing black every day. She was in elementary school. All D's and F's. Nicole's parents couldn't figure out what was wrong. I know Nicole well. I would sit down with Nicole and work with her. I helped her with long division. She got it like that. I said, there's nothing wrong with this child. She gets it. But she's getting D's and F's. Later, they discovered Nicole had an absence seizure problem. She was zoning out in absence seizures like 100 times every morning in class. So she wasn't learning, but no one knew it. So they get her help with that, and she's still getting D's and F's in the public school. They find an amazing charter school. She gets in the charter school. Within a few months, all A's and B's, cheerful, popular, everyone loves her. She stops wearing black. She's so happy. The diabolical unions closed down her school that year. She's back to D's and F's. That's evil. Anyone can see that's evil. That sweet child is suffering. She's in high school now. Her parents still can't get her the school she needs because they don't have the money to choose a private school. And the diabolical unions closed down her charter. That's evil. I went to the State House and I spoke to the Senate Education Committee and I told Nicole's story. Evil Senator Leyva attacked me after I shared that story. Why did she attack me? Because I dared to say to the Education Committee that when the unions come to you and lobby against school choice, they're not speaking for me and they're not speaking for loving teachers. Listen to teachers. She attacked me for that. It's on video. Let's get it out there. That's the kind of story we need to lead with, right? Great teachers, vulnerable, needy child being hurt by evil unions and their evil politicians who are in their pockets. Oh, I forgot the best part. Senator Leyva's kids are in private school. After you tell those stories, you'll get teachers. They'll go, hey, that's wrong. I want to help that little kid. You'll get teachers on your side. Right now, teachers are blamed. And the problem with leading with test scores, I'm going to tell you another story. I'm a storyteller. It's part of being a good teacher. We're storytellers. Another reason you need to tell stories to reach teachers. Here's why teachers feel blamed. The school choice movement has been leading with test scores and stats and data. Okay, let me just, day in the life of a teacher. I taught kinder through 4th grade. I taught in a school of 42 languages, lower income neighborhood. Every color of the rainbow. I didn't notice colors of my students. We're all different colors. All different languages. We were all friends. We were all doing great till the unions came in to try to divide us. But on my campus, when I was teaching 4th grade, every year, same story. First day of school. Have I had any impact on those kids on the first day of school? No, none. First day of school. I would test every single child on the first day of school. I would test them on reading comprehension and reading vocabulary. First day of school, every year, 1/3 of my students would test at a primer level. That's kindergarten. They're 4th graders. Another third would test somewhere between 1st and 3rd grade level. Another third would test around grade level, like 3rd to 4th, and a few, like a handful, would be above grade level. I'm supposed to teach that class by myself. And then some school choice person's going to come pick on me and say that I'm not doing a good job. And I'm working my tail off, long hours, volunteering after school to give these kids extra help, helping their parents. I would bring those kids who were kindergarten level on day 1. By the end of the year, I'd get them to 3rd grade level. That's 3 years progress in 1 year, right? That's huge. Okay. Now, I don't say that to say I'm a great teacher. I'm just like every other teacher or good teacher. I'm working hard. It's not rocket science. It's practice. It's phonics. If you know what you're doing, it's easy. Well, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's not brainiac. Then some school choice person would say, those test scores aren't high enough because my students still wouldn't pass because they still weren't at the 4th grade level. Only that 1/3 that was actually prepared could pass the standardized testing. So you wouldn't see the growth. Now, I know that they do growth and all that now, but nobody's focusing on that when teachers are listening. That's not what all teachers hear is, they're blaming me and I'm working my butt off. What's going on? We can't do that anymore. We can't let teachers feel blamed. Because what happens is they run right back into the arms of the union. Protect me. They all hate me. They're all picking on me. don't let the unions control our messaging. For 30 plus years, I've been trying to get teachers to listen about their unions, because I figured out the unions were a problem when I was a student teacher. Stories in the book. And then I served as a union leader for 3 years. And I saw one of my brave friends in the room who served as a union leader for years. She's amazing. You got to talk to her. When you serve on the inside and you see the corruption, you go, oh my gosh, most teachers have no idea how bad it is. So for 30 plus years, I couldn't get teachers to listen until two things happened. Two things happened, and they just happened. The sex ed, which you need to message SEXX ed, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if you just label it sex ed, they're going to go, they're a bunch of, what do they call us when we don't, what are they? Prudes. They're a bunch of prudes. But if you put XXX, oh, what? Now they get it, okay? The sex ed and the equity discipline policies that came down during the Obama administration, those two things have turned our classrooms on their head. All of a sudden, teachers are listening. But I go out and I talk to all kinds of conservatives, and they say, oh, we don't talk about the social issues. Stop that. All the left does is talk about social issues. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So the left talks social issues, social issues, social issues, and they say, don't talk politics, don't talk politics. And then that's all they do, is talk politics. Look, we got to talk about the social issues. Why? Because it's the only thing teachers care about, and it's the only thing parents care about. Right now, we could win the whole country on these two issues, the discipline and the sex ed. Because here's what teachers don't know. The teachers' union is behind all of it. They're behind the discipline, the horrible discipline. Our classrooms are war zones, and they're behind the sex ed, which I won't mention because there's children in the room tonight. But I'm going to tell you one story about a teacher who's in my book. His name's Aaron Benner. Aaron Benner is one of the best teachers I know. Outstanding disciplinarian. He also happens to be black. These racial equity discipline policies, if you know about them, we're not allowed to suspend kids of color. It's ridiculous, arbitrary, right? Doesn't have anything to do with behavior, has to do with color. We're going to divide everybody by color. Aaron, a black teacher, he can speak to this, right? So he does, in my book. Aaron was teaching in his classroom, had his students under control. A kid ran in the room, picked up a computer, slammed it on the ground, and ran out. Now he can't teach. Everybody's upset. That child was never disciplined. He was still on campus all day, the next day, the next day. So their classrooms and their schools have become war zones. He watched as a 4th grade little boy punched a little girl in the nose, knocked her out cold. A 4th grader. No one disciplined that child. The mother of the little girl, 2 days later, Aaron called to check on her. The principal had never called the mother. She didn't even know. Okay? This is evil. And the teachers don't know. Teachers' unions are behind it. So these are the things we have to teach teachers. Okay, here's the basics of the messaging. 1, unions divide and conquer. Don't let them. 2, teachers are our friends, not our foes. Let's get them on our team. 3, lead with winning stories, not test scores. 4, social issues. YES. Social issues. Yes, yes, yes. Talk about them, especially the 2 I mentioned. And quit letting the enemy dictate our message. We lead our message. They don't. Quit being afraid of them. You know what? I want to tell you something about bullies. When you stand up to a bully, they're suddenly chickens. Because they stand, you know, you've all seen the Christmas Story. And that kid finally wallops them, and they're scared. That's the unions. That's the unions. During our lawsuit, the most common question people asked me was, are you afraid for your life during our lawsuit? Some people still ask me that. But what was amazing was we would get these insider stories from people inside the union who didn't agree with us. And they'd come to me and they'd go, Rebecca, the unions are terrified of you. And I'd go, what? I'm a 5'4" kindergarten teacher. They were terrified of me because I spoke the truth. And I spoke the truth without fear. That's what we need to do. Speak the truth. We're right. Okay, lastly, we're outspent 100 million to 1. Right? Are we going to get discouraged? No. Here's why. We got God on our side. And David won, right? David won with one smooth stone. Okay? But our lawsuit and a lawsuit that came behind ours freed every public sector employee from forced unionism. They just don't know it. They're all still in those unions, but they don't have to pay them anymore. But they don't know it. And a lot of them think the unions are good when they're really bad. So we just have an education campaign to do. We educate, and help people out. Every teacher we've given a copy of my book, even if they were union leaders, have left the union. The only ones who stayed in are the ones who are there as moles, who are trying to, feed us information. So it's just educating them. So we have a chance to free them. So we have a program we call Adopt a Teacher. Adopt a school board member. Adopt a PTA member. Adopt a pastor. Adopt. Anyone you know who's believing these lies. Educate them. Help teachers stop funding these unions. Get teachers on our team instead of on the opposite team. And we can win.
And that was Rebecca Friedrichs, the author of Standing Up to Goliath, at our school choice kickoff rally last month at Riley's Farm in Yucaipa. And by the way, if you want more information about that, just go to californiaschoolchoice.org. That's californiaschoolchoice.org. And don't go away, because we got more coming up from that town hall last month at Riley's Farm. We're going to be hearing from Vicki Algers, as well as a wonderful panel of people she's interviewing. Stay tuned. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. I'm Josh Jacobs, in for Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson, and we'll be right back.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
And a very good evening to you. This is Josh Jacobs, co-host of Radio Free Los Angeles. Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson are on vacation this week. I'm filling in for you. And we are kind of picking up where we left off before the break. We were at the California School Choice Rally about a month ago at Riley's Farm in Yucaipa. And if you want to give to California School Choice, we'd love to have your donation, also your signature, to get School Choice on the ballot in 2022. The website is californiaschoolchoice.org. That's californiaschoolchoice.org. And it's now time for our next speaker. Her name is Vicki Alger. She holds a senior fellowship at the Fraser Institute in Vancouver, British Columbia, as well as the Independent Women's Forum in Washington, D.C. Her research focuses on education reforms that promote a competitive education marketplace and increase parents' control over their children's education. Now, Vicki led a panel of some wonderful people, different people from all backgrounds in Southern California, including Cecilia Iglesias, Keith Harden, Mark Ang, Larry Sand, and Miss Gillum. And here is Vicki to introduce our different guests.
I am so honored to be here. I am a research fellow with the Independent Institute in Oakland, California. However, I am not a Californian. I think that makes me the odd person out on this panel. I am actually from Arizona. And as many of you may know, Arizona is considered ground zero, a national leader in parental rights and education. Name a choice program, chances are Arizona came up with it. If you go right next door, you are not assigned to a district public school. You can pick any public district school, charter schools, which we do not cap, homeschooling without having to play Mother May I with the state. We have 4 private school scholarship programs, and I'm very proud that we were the first state to have an educational savings account program. I also have, thank you, certainly we have some of the best research experts in the country right here at this table. But I'd like to share something. This is not an academic issue for me. I'm a stepmom of 4 boys, all of whom went through district public schools. I have 3 of whom are in district public schools now. So all the myths you hear about draining, bad for teachers, test scores go down, traditional public schools don't do as well. I am living, breathing proof that my boys today are getting a better education with all the choice and competition that I got when I was a student about 100 years ago before we had choice. So I'm actually going to start with Keith. Keith, if you would introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. And Keith's question is, what does school choice have in common with the first American Revolution of 1776?
Wow. I chose that question because, in my environment, I receive, I work with mostly Latinos and blacks, in the inner city schools of Los Angeles. Probably about 90%, don't quote me on it, but 90% Latino by now. And maybe about 7 or 8% black. But the point I want to make is that I talk to teachers often, and the teachers and I have a good relationship there, even though, they know that I'm a conservative, and kids are always constantly coming up to me asking, why do you support Trump? You like Trump. Trump's a racist, the whole stuff. I get it all the time. But as Rebecca kind of laid the groundwork here, it's important to realize that you've got to have a good narrative, be a storyteller. So I'm going to answer that question by telling a quick story. This is what I say to the kids. And I actually had this happen with me. Let me tell the story about the teacher. The teacher wanted to know about this. What does the school choice movement have in common with the American Revolution? Well, I started out by saying when the founders and the American people compared the natural law to the tyrannical British laws that became, they concluded that they were justified in their revolution by appealing to the supreme judge of the world. Now, think about that for a moment. That's part of there are 4 principles in the Declaration that I teach. I talk to kids about in the lunch areas, on the schoolyards, not in the classrooms. Even though Lincoln said that today's philosophy in the classroom is tomorrow's philosophy of government. But I talk to the kids on the, when they're outside the classroom. So I basically would talk to them about these very things. And when the founders used that natural law principle, that is the key right there. We have a saying at my school. I've kind of changed the culture of the school, by the way, with this saying, with this quote. I always say, the laws of nature are advancing. And then the kids are finally starting to say that. Laws of nature, laws of nature. And then finally kids would ask me, what is the laws of nature? It's just a rule of action. It's a rule of action established by the Creator. This is by Noah Webster. Established by the Creator to preserve life, liberty, and property. Think about it that way. We can endure certain evils in society if we know and understand the laws of nature. There are certain evils that we've had to endure, just like in life. We have to endure certain things in life. But where we stop enduring is when we say, life, liberty, and property are jeopardized. Life, liberty, and property. So I tell the kids that all the time. And anyway, back to the story real quickly. The teacher asked me about that, and I said, well, the right to consent is the 3rd principle of the Declaration. The right to consent. We have a right to give our consent. The parents have their right to give their consent as to where their children go and attend. And so one teacher said to me, well, that's not good because some parents don't have the education. A lot of them can't even speak English because they're, the parents of DACA. So they don't speak English. So how could you? I said, well, doesn't that sound a little condescending? Because isn't that what they said about slavery? They said that the slaves were uneducated and therefore they shouldn't be free. So then you should have seen him change his demeanor. He looked at me and said, he started stuttering. So my whole point to that is storytelling, building your narrative on the basis of what our true weapons are. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal but mighty through God, to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imagination, and bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. We do that through the principles of the founding. And the Bible is the first basis, the laws of nature, and nature's God. So that's what I talk about.
Well, Keith, thank you so much. And I think that's when we talk about storytelling, which I think is so important, it can't just be boo this school or boo that school, much less teachers. I very rarely use the term school choice, actually, because this isn't about a parent's freedom to choose this school or that school. This is a parent's rights issue. This issue is about the God-given unalienable right of every parent, whether you're California, Arizona, or anywhere in the world, to direct the education and upbringing of your children. That's what we're fighting for. So we say school choice, but that's what an education savings account for all California families would do. It puts parents back in their God-given rightful place to educate their children as they, not governments, bureaucracies, or unions see fit. So next we have Mark Eng. And Mark, you do so much great work, and you're going to talk to us about practical solutions, about informing the public. Because it's very hard when you haven't had options for so long to say you can go from picking vanilla ice cream or vanilla ice cream to go into the 31 flavors store.
Hello, everyone. I think a lot of people in the room know me. I'm Mark Eng. I started a few nonprofits really as a desire to get out to the community and push certain issues that were near and dear to my heart. Obviously, school choice is one of them, and so thankful for a great organization like School Choice 2020, and been working closely with them, with Ceci Iglesias' great work with Parent Union, and these organizations are the lifeblood of the movement. Because I think what we heard earlier, and Rebecca had a great idea about adopt a parent, adopt a teacher. That is so important because that is our first artery into getting our message outside of the echo chamber and actually hitting new people. Okay, as you see, that voting block of uninformed parents has become so big now that they're influencing elections, not because of any passion for public school education, but more it's a collective block of apathy, is the way I see it. So we, as people that care about our society, our education system, have a responsibility to really reach out beyond the echo chamber and to make connections and to inform and be teachers ourselves to the community. So with what we've done with our organizations, Asian Industry B2B, People Encouraging People, and Pass the Beacon, those are three of my organizations, we have thrown events to creatively show what it means to have choices. And in fact, Denise Soto right there and I are working together on our next big event, which is Education Choices Fair geared towards high school students on February 1st at the USC Verdugo Hills Hospital in Glendale. And the purpose of an event like that is to actually show parents who are in that crucial time of high school to say, hey, you have to be strategic about looking at your choices, not only for a 4-year college, which we know now, let's be real on this, it's really indoctrination camp. You have 4-year college liberal arts degrees, kids graduating 22 years old with no skills whatsoever. I mean, I constantly hire interns, and it's amazing. Every year I see that the talent pool is getting worse and worse. And I think the latest studies have come out where we have actual data of kids that have grown up with Common Core and exactly what that has impacted their lack of math skills, lack of English skills. I mean, it is appalling. It is actual, like Rebecca said, it's diabolical what is being done. So it's important that, especially in a state like California, and unfortunately we're not as small as Arizona and manageable where you could start a movement, but we can start in our local areas. And I want to shine the light on someone like Ceci Iglesias, who in Santa Ana has been like a one-woman fighter and has started a movement. And now I see Santa Ana compared to other urban environments is actually, the average parent there understands, at least in the very basics, that they have a choice and they don't have to eat that sandwich that is being given to them. So it starts with one person, okay? And just opening up that little nugget of saying you have a choice. Charter schools are a choice. Okay, private schools are a choice. Supplemental education is a choice. And, that's where it starts. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Well, I think that's something we should all keep in mind. No one deserves a sandwich. But Mark, you also brought up something that I think dovetails very well into a subject I'd like to talk about with Larry, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for, I think it's been 15 years now. One of the first people I met when I lived in Sacramento for a time, advocating for parental choice, and I found one of my strongest allies among teachers of all people through Larry. So, Larry, I was wondering, one of the things that I think is the biggest misconception about parental rights in education and school choice is that, that's some vast right-wing conspiracy policy, which is interesting, even though charter schools actually came from the other side politically. So how should we talk about this? Should we talk about it politically?
Okay, my name is Larry Sand. I'm the president of the nonprofit California Teachers Empowerment Network. I'm a writer. I speak publicly, and I speak usually about union issues, as Rebecca well knows, and as Vicki knows, I speak about school choice. And it's very important to recognize that this is not a right-left thing. Just a few names that you may or may not know: Jack Koons, Terry Moe, Steve Sugarman, Ben Austin, Michelle Reed, Gloria Romero. These are lefties. In Jack's case, he wrote a book 40 years ago on the importance of school choice. These are all passionate people, and we just need to remember that. There's certainly a bad side to the left. The teacher union left is lost. We don't need to talk to them. But there's a left-of-center group that is very important constituency. Also, and everybody, we're talking about messaging, so I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents on that. That this is about more than school choice, it is parental choice. It's parents' right. We feed our kids food we want, take them to the doctors we want, let them listen to the music we want them to listen to. We should send them to the schools that we want to send them to. It's about educational freedom. If you're speaking to somebody left of center, talk about civil rights. It's certainly a civil rights issue. If you're talking to people on the right, talk about liberty. It's certainly a liberty issue. Just a few things you can talk to people about. Now, let's just say people on the left love Pell Grants. The teachers' unions love Pell Grants. This sends poor kids, or help pay poor kids' college tuition at most schools across the country, including religious schools like Notre Dame. They love that kind of school choice. They love Pell Grants, but on K through 12, oh no. You hate public education. What? I once posed this question to Ben Allen, the head of the education committee. Rebecca Friedrichs was in the room as she told her story about what happened when she was there, and I was there when Connie Leva lit into her. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I made the point about Pell Grants to Ben Allen, the head of the education committee. He went, gee, that's a really good point. And we moved on from there, but most people don't think in these terms. People have choices when they buy yogurt, when they buy CDs, when they download music, when they buy cat food. Why not education? If you told me you were going out to dinner tomorrow night with a friend, or your husband, your wife, I said, oh, you're going to go to that little restaurant down the street from where you live? Mm-hmm. And you say, no, I'm going to go to a restaurant across town. Much better food, much better service. I say, no, you have to go to that crappy little restaurant down the street from where you live. Yet this is how we do education in California and throughout much of the country. I would urge you to learn the talking points. The educational establishment will tell you that it hurts public schools. School choice hurts public schools. Greg Foster, who's a researcher, found that academic outcomes improve in public schools where choice has been in play 31 out of 33 times. One was neutral. Only one study showed that school choice actually hurt public schools. But I'll take 31 to 1 any day. In addition to public schools improving, it has certainly a positive impact on taxpayers, a positive impact on desegregation. It helps poor people, most of all, and it actually increases teacher salaries. Why? Competition works. We have competition everywhere else in the United States. Why not in education? Also, if you want to familiarize yourself with facts, EdChoice is a wonderful organization, the preeminent organization, as I'm sure Ms. Alger will agree with. Call them or send them an email, sign up with them, and you'll get a ton of information. Good information, real information, not what you get from the teachers' unions. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to add very quickly to what Larry just said about all the myths that we hear in EdChoice, just edchoice.org. But in terms of public schools being harmed, district public schools being harmed, I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. When my second oldest stepson, he had just started middle school, so he was going into 6th grade. This is in Arizona. We don't live in a rural area. We live in a suburban area. They didn't offer Spanish in Arizona. That was too exotic. If you wanted to take Spanish, parents could spend $300 for like one of those programs you could buy online for half the price. Needless to say, the Algers did not opt for that choice. But thankfully, what did happen is right up the block, Basis Charter Schools opened up another campus. If you haven't heard about Basis, check out U.S. News and World Report. A Basis school pretty much dominates the top 20 public high school rankings in the United States of America. So Basis opens up a school in less than 9 months, by the way. Less than 9 months from when you dug to the ground to when it opened up. And guess what they started offering? For no extra charge. Not only Spanish and more exotic languages like, French, but they also offered Mandarin, Latin, Greek. So in 7th grade, 2 of my stepsons now have been able to study Mandarin, and they're also studying Spanish. So you want to know if competition hurts children left in those poor district public schools? That's phony baloney. It's a tide that lifts all boats. Now, speaking of tide that lifts all boats, this may be the first time we've met in person, Cecilia. I know you by your work. Just fantastic work. Cecilia is the Executive Director of Education and Community Relations at the California Policy Center, which if you aren't reading their information, you need to start doing it immediately. Fantastic work. And Cecilia, I'd love to hear more about the great work you're doing.
My name is Cecilia Iglesias, and I am currently the Director of Education and Community Relations for the California Policy Center. We're housed out of Orange County, in Tustin specifically. My role with the California Policy Center is to oversee this project that is called the Parent Union. And the Parent Union, what we do is teach parents how to advocate for their rights to be the best advocate when it comes to parental choice. I predominantly work with the Latino community in Santa Ana, and the reason I got involved was because in 2012 I was elected to the school board. So I served on the Santa Ana Unified School District Board of Education for 6 years. And my first year in office, it was an eye-opener. I got to see a lot of the shenanigans that happen behind closed doors, and especially the way, like Rebecca was saying, the bullies of the teachers union, and the way they manipulate our staff, which is the teachers and also our classified staff. But the first thing, if you guys recall in Prop 30, 2012 when it passed, it was for districts that were predominantly poor districts because they didn't have the money so they can provide the added curricular activities to the kids because, in Santa Ana they're just not wealthy enough to have access to all these programs. So what happened, the first thing that happens, money comes to the district, and that was I remember it was about in 2013 we started talking about it. First thing comes to the district, we were being given $108 million additional a year in Santa Ana. Santa Ana, our budget already was close to $700 million a year because we serve about 56,000 students. So then we have $108 million coming more. So our budget was about $840 million. And the first thing that happens when this extra money comes, of course, it's not for the kids. That's how they sold it to us, the voters, so that it was for the kids going to the classrooms. First thing they do is take a chunk out of it. They negotiated raises in the tune of about 12% of their raise. So it was about $40 million directly stripped from the kids. And for me, what really motivated me was the union is telling the parents we don't have enough money to give you guys the extra money for the SATs or the extra money to send your kids to field trips, the extra money to give you all the material that you guys need in order for the kids to be successful, for tutoring, for all this. This is what the parents want. So I remember that, parents would come to me. The fact that, like you were saying, in Santa Ana, many of our community, the parents are Spanish speaking. So, they didn't have like that ability or maybe that comfort level to go to a school board member to ask them is like what's really going on. But by upbringing, is that I was raised in the church. My mom was a pastor, so I'm very comfortable in being out in the community and showing up where we need to be in order for us to organize and really talk to our parents. So the parents knew me already, so they started asking me. It's like, what, we want more tutoring, we want more resources for our kids, but our teachers are saying we don't have enough money. So then what I started doing, thank God for social media. Sometimes it could either be something you use to benefit you, or sometimes it could hurt you. But I started using it for benefits. So I started reporting out what was going on in the school district, the things that I could report out, and I would translate it into Spanish. And I would tell them, this is what's going on. They want to take away your money. They want to do this. So things that I could legally share with them, oh my gosh, the parents were getting outraged. And like Rebecca was saying, the PTA has a strong hold on our parents, and they lie to them. So the things that we started doing with a group of parents, there was about 12 of us in 2015, because I voted against the raise. Because I said, it's not that I don't believe teachers should get compensated. I want it on merit, based on performance. So when I started asking and demanding accountability, oh my God, I was a target. I was a target for them for forever. So they started lumping me in, so with all the conservative, the far right, and so in 2015, I remember they started by protesting me. They would come to the school board meetings, and they just wanted me out because, how dare I ask for accountability? How dare I, say that our students are, they're not proficient. And I would bring up the stats, and I know sometimes we say we shouldn't talk about stats. Yes, we should talk about stats because our kids are failing in Santa Ana. Our kids, and I would compare it to other districts. I'd say, why can't our kids be like Newport? Why can't our kids be like Irvine? So when parents started seeing that we could be, if, given that they were the priority. So when we started doing that, of course, naturally I became a target for the teachers union. So in 2015, they started coming after me. They wanted to recall me. When I was on the school board, they're like, recall Ceci, recall. So they would, oh my God, they just come in numbers because they pay the people to show up, and they also manipulate our parents. So so when I started doing that, and in 2016, and I remember, so going back to the parents, so we started giving this information out in social media. So then when parents knew that I was about them, I was about school choice. So and when in 2016, when the re-election came, unfortunately, they would use me against the Democrats and would say I was with President Trump, that I wanted to deport the kids, I wanted to put kids in cages, I wanted to do all this. And they're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So they came after me. They spent about $200,000 to try to unseat me. But the thing that really helped is talking about school choice and talking about parent empowerment. So, lo and behold, the election happened, and I got reelected with the highest votes because parents did not believe their lies.
And that's Cecilia Iglesias, and she is the Executive Director of Education and Community Relations at the California Policy Center and founder of the Parent Union. That was at Riley's Farm last month for the California School Choice Kickoff Rally and Town Hall. We're going to be hearing more from Ceci after the break, as well as our weekly Government Grifter Award with Juan Tierra. I'm Josh Jacobs, in for Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. We'll talk to you after the top of the hour news.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, thank you very much, Basil Hoffman. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. My name is Josh Jacobs. One of the co-hosts on the show. Mike and Jonathan are away for Thanksgiving. Hoping you had a wonderful Thanksgiving yourself. Hopefully not too much of a turkey hangover and all that good stuff. The funny thing is I didn't even have pumpkin pie this time. I actually had sweet potato pie as well as apple pie, both very good, some of my favorites. So anyway, we're in the middle of a discussion right now at the California School Choice Kickoff Rally and Town Hall that happened at Riley's Farm about a month ago. And we've had different people speaking and different speakers. So we're in the middle of Cecilia Iglesias' speech. She's the Executive Director of Education and Community Relations at the California Policy Center and founder of the Parent Union. And here's the rest of her speech from that event.
So we saw that the Parent Union uniting parents was very effective. So we formed this little chapter out of 15 of us. It grew within months to about 600 of us on social media talking about what was happening in Santa Ana, what was happening. So they were so excited that this really helped. So in a way, what I said about organizing parents, it also helps for us to educate them. So when we come to elections, they're informed and they're not going to take, like all the negative information that's being presented to them about Republicans, that Republicans are all against the kids, because I'm a Republican and a lot of people, they use that against me, but the parents didn't believe it. Santa Ana is 70% Democrat and it's about 80% Latino, but you can see the power when you communicate and you really take their best interest at heart, so they'll see that. So the Parent Union has been a project that once I in 2016 the California Policy Center hired me to be their director because they saw how effective that was. So I started with Santa Ana. That's how we grew, and we're very strong in Santa Ana. But now with the support of the California Policy Center, we have grown chapters in Riverside, in San Diego. We're starting in LA, and then also definitely in Orange County. We're in Anaheim, Costa Mesa, and in Huntington Beach. So there's power in organizing parents and boots on the ground. That's what really helps. And that's something that I am hoping when delivering your message, that what we have to do is take it to the people, and people are going to listen. So I'm very excited about this petition for 2020. Count us in with the California Policy Center and the Parent Union. We're going to be there together.
And I think that's so important, the boots on the ground, because we've got great research, we've got people running for office, and again, please run for school board. You want to know where in any given state, majority of the budget's going to be spent on K-12, and the ones who decide how it's spent is your school boards. So even if you can't run for school board, I would start getting people in your neighborhoods, in your communities. All right, I'm going to watch the meeting or go to the meeting. We should be able to streamline the meetings. You should be able to watch it. Have 2 people on call every month. Watch out around, what would it be, March or April, where you're deciding what the budget's going to be and all of that. That's going to be key months. But partner together. Watch those school boards and get on social media, get on the radio, because the one thing they don't like, they do have shame. That's one thing they have going for them, because they will be shamed into backing off of votes. We're seeing that in Arizona as they're bringing the sex, triple X, even worse than California, to our schools. And in Tucson, parents got out the word, and a very arrogant superintendent who thought, I'm Hispanic, and so people are going to vote for me just because of, my last name. When parents found out, there's been a steady stream at his door ever since. And the beautiful thing about parental choice is you either stop it, or our kids are going to go to St. Teresa's up the street, or they're going to go to the charter school, or they're going to be homeschooled. So it's critically important. Free market. And I am so excited for our last panelist, Miss Ashley Gilliam. You have done so much, and you are so passionate. I'm going to just ask a very blunt question, because we saw some scores come out. We're reading horrible things in the news. Do black minds matter under the status quo?
That's a good question. Before I answer it, though, I just want to say that Mr. Alexander, every time I get with him in a meeting, he reminds me of Judge Judy's courtroom. You know how she shushes adults? He's about the only one that do that besides her. He does that a lot. I don't take any offense to it, but he just reminds me. So I'm start calling him Judge Alexander from this point. So anyway, but he's a great guy. But anyway, I have been doing historical talks with those you guys know for a number of years now. And what I try to do is dispel a lot of the myths and rumors that are out there, especially for black Americans. They really have been indoctrinated with a lot of false information. And so my job is to really try to give them good information. So that way when they decide to vote, they will have it on informed decision. I tell them all the time, don't take what I say or anybody else says. If I give you information, you need to go study for yourself. and find out whether what I'm saying is true. And don't go to one source. Go to numerous sources to find out, and then you have your own information, and then you make those informed decisions. This is just going to be brief here, but I'm a stats person, too, and I believe in painting a picture using stats. So this is the 400th year of blacks landing here in the United States of America. About 20 Africans came at that point, that first slave ship. Throughout the centuries, Africans literally risked their life and limb to learn how to read. They were tortured, murdered, raped, just for learning how to read. But guess what? They learned how to read anyway. Okay? There were no safe spaces. They knew from early on that education was the key to success in the society. And not only did black people or Africans, they survived, but they thrived in that environment. We were the scientists and the mathematicians. There was a time when blacks valued education. But sometimes, when I listen to people, they think that we're ignorant and dumb because of the fact that that's what the news media told you. And the last 50 years, kind of, that's the mode we've been in. But let me just tell you a few things that black people have invented over the centuries, whatever, so you be aware of everything you enjoy pretty much right now, and all these modern conveniences pretty much came from black or Africans. The gear shift, bicycle frame, blood plasma bag, cellular phone, the indoor commode, clothes drives, curtain rods, door stops, dustpan, egg beater, electric light bulb, elevator, eye protector, fire escape ladders, folding beds, folding chairs, fountain pen, gas mask, golf tee, guitar, sweet sweeper, thermostat control, tricycle, railroad signal, that NASA program. Wouldn't have been a NASA program. It wouldn't have been for those black women that pushed that program. That GPS system that you got getting here, black woman from NASA. Hand stamp, ice cream scooper, horseshoe, ironing board, keychains, lantern, lawnmower, lemon squeezer, locks, lunch pail, mop, motor, peanut butter, pencil sharpener, record player, refrigerator, rolling pin, spark plugs, stethoscopes, the stove, phone transmitter, traffic lights, typewriter, gas burner, etc., etc. Now, you can go to any site you want to. What I just read you can see 10 more pages of that. And the reason we were able to do that, because we value education. We were the scientists and the mathematicians in this environment. We moved from that in 1965. 75% of black children were born out of God-centered marriages, moms and dads, where the family, the church, and the school all work together to be that cornerstone of the community. Then what happened in the 60s, and we'll go on that, you hear one of my talks, the government got hold to our community. Okay, they said they wanted to help us. So you don't have to go to Venezuela or any place else. We had socialism right here in the United States. They took a population that were the inventors and the workers, put them on these social programs. That's why your welfare programs came in on purpose. And after that period of time, look what happened to us at this period of time. Our families have been decimated with the social experiments that actually failed. Okay, now let's advance through 50 years, okay? And these are some just general statistics. Sometimes you read different places, you get different statistics, but this is just overall. In 2014, 75% of black children were born out of wedlock. In 50 years, there have been a complete reversal of what our families used to look like. 75% of black boys in California don't meet the state reading and writing standards. 50% of black boys in California don't meet the state English standards. 80% of black boys fail to meet state reading standards by the 4th grade, and a large percentage of those kids will end up on welfare, homeless, jail, or in the graveyard. 60% of juvenile delinquents and 80% of adults inmates are illiterate. 48% of black boys in California do not finish high school. So if you don't even get a high school diploma, what are your chances even of surviving a few years out of high school? Okay, California black students are twice as likely as white students to be identified as learning disabilities, and more likely to be identified for special education in general ed. They're putting a lot of our kids, because they don't want to deal with them in special education classes. So they put them in the corners. We don't want to deal with you. They're not being educated at all. When I was growing up years ago, 50s and 60s, sometimes in the South, we had health education classes where, the boys went to one class for a week, the girls went to another class, and then we learned about, biology, and then we came back together. What they have now is how-to sex education classes, okay? This is the reason that California rates probably 46 or 48 out of 50 states now. Our kids are not being educated. Now, I call this care, okay? Instead of talking about condoms, we need to be talking about chemistry. Instead of talking about anal sex, we need to talk about arithmetic. Instead of right to abortion, we need to talk about reading and writing. And instead of talking about education in sex how-to, we need to be talking about some English. Because these kids cannot read or write. So what we're doing now, the sex education has replaced basic education for our children. And it's not the school's fault. It's not the union's fault. 50 years ago, parents, we relinquished and gave up control of our children to the government. And it's time for us to step up as parents, because a lot of parents want that control back, but sometimes they feel it's out there by themselves, okay? We need to form coalitions, let these parents know they're not out there by themselves. And like I said, the unions may be strong, the government may be strong, and maybe that's a few thousand people. But if I got 10 million parents coming to you telling you what you are going to do, guess what's going to happen? You are going to do it, or we're going to put you out of office, okay? So we have all the power, just taking the power back. Now I'm going to end this with what Martin Luther King said, okay? This is a quote for him. The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that's a goal of true education. Thank you.
Well, that was just, well, you can't top that. What forms of parental choice are available? Is it really possible in California? Hint, hint, it is. We outnumber the opponents. Right. We do.
Well, that was Vicki Alger leading our panel at the kickoff for the California School Choice Rally and Town Hall. We had at Riley's Farm about a month ago, and I'm glad that we were able to finally present it to you because we have many listeners who wish that they had been able to make it that just weren't able to make it. So you got to hear most of the speeches tonight. There was a little bit afterwards, a little bit of question answering we didn't get a chance to get to, but hopefully we'll have the entire interview, the entire town hall online very, very soon. Vicki is a school choice advocate, education reforms, and also she had a great panel there, including Miss Ashley Gilliam, who we just heard. We also had Cecilia Iglesias, Larry Sand, Mark Eng, and Keith Hardeen. And by the way, if you want to help us out with school choice, just go to our website, californiaschoolchoice.org. That's californiaschoolchoice.org. Send us some love. As Mike always says, don't tell me that you support school choice unless you support school choice. So send a donation, whether it's $5, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, $500, maybe $5,000, and help California School Choice and bring the schools back to parents rather than the government running that. So we thank you for that. And roll it, Maestro. And now it's time for the weekly Government Grifter Award. And here to talk about a bureaucracy more weighed down than too much Thanksgiving turkey is our host, Le Monsieur Juan Tierra. How's it going, Juan?
Josh. Good evening, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. How was your Thanksgiving, by the way?
Ate too much. The best was I had apple pie, cherry pie, and pumpkin cheesecake, which did me in.
Well, I had apple pie, but I had sweet potato pie as well. I finally had some pumpkin pie here at work because they bought some pies and turkey for the weekend and holiday working board operators. But I'm glad that you had a good time. Did you spend it here in Southern California or out of state?
No, I was in Long Beach, actually. My daughter-in-law's. My daughter and son-in-law's.
Oh, cool. That sounds great. Well, speaking of which, we had these great panelists of people, and they talked about, varieties of things, and kind of the Government Grifter Award tonight has to do with diversity, or so-called diversity. Now, my question is, I've got for you afterwards, did anything that the panel mentioned, especially the inventions that Miss Ashley mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, are they ever mentioned anything that was talked about in these diversity studies programs you're going to be talking about?
Well, I missed all that, fortunately. I'm old enough not to have taken, my children did have to take these ethnic studies and diversity classes. But I knew about the Peanuts, with George Washington Carver. That I knew about. And I saw the movie about the black ladies who worked on the NASA program. It was excellent. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a great movie.
Yeah, you're right. I forget it too, but it was a great movie. I think it was Academy Award nominated and definitely deserved that.
Well, time to get going here, Josh.
All right.
Now, last week was Diversity Industrial Complex. However, it had an evil spawn. it spawned ethnic and gender studies. Both of these fiascos gained traction in the disastrous decade of the 1960s and were part of a nationwide trend to create two new, very expensive bureaucracies. We all heard of black studies, Hispanic studies, Asian studies, Native American studies, ad infinitum. What's the purpose? Here's a typical mission statement in academic leftist indoctrination psychobabble. Quote, ethnic studies is an interdisciplinary approach to the studies of cultures, languages, historical issues, contemporary issues related to various groups and applying the concept of colonialism, decolonialism, genocide, environmental racism, and or resilience as foundation of indigenous epistemologies and sovereignty. Got all that?
Well, I do have some aspirin right now because I'm about ready to take it because I haven't a clue about what half these things are even are about.
Well, that's a good question. Does that make any sense? Not really.
No.
Actually, the translation, its history is what happened. That's it. But there's got to be indoctrination involved. Now, we're on to cost here. We're in the government grifters. What does this cost? Here's a small sample. Tonight, I'm going to take another shot at my old alma mater, UC Berkeley, a once elite university which has fallen into well-deserved disrepute. All the nominees tonight are from the Ethnic Studies Department at Cal. Number 1, Professor Sherry Hundorf, who teaches, ready? Interdisciplinary Native American Studies, Cultural Studies, Gender Studies, American Studies, Literary and Visual Studies. Total salary and benefits, 2018, $234,000. There's more. Number 2, Professor John Powell, his topics, civil rights, civil liberties, structural racialization, racial justice, regionalism, concentrated poverty and urban sprawl, and opportunity-based housing. Total salary and benefits, are you sitting down 2018? In 2018, he pulled down $517,000.
Oh, goodness. Now,
Number
wait a minute.
3.
Isn't that kind of sexist that he's making twice as much as Sherry Hundorf is?
You could make that argument, but that's for the Ethnic Studies Department to settle out. Number 3, and here's an exotic one. Professor Juana Maria Rodriguez, her areas of expertise, race and sexual politics, Latino, Latina, and Latinx, which is everything in between, I guess, Caribbean literatures and cultures, women of color feminisms, queer activism in the Americas, transgenderism and sex work. It'll come back later. Total pay and benefits, 2018, $221,000.
Oh, goodness.
No, the total pay and benefits of those 3 nominees total $972,000. That's close to $1 million. Now, usually our award goes to the person who makes the most money. That'd be number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, I have a different one. Got a drum roll, please.
And the winner is...
Nominee number 3, Juana Maria Rodriguez, $217,000 because of her exotic class suffix as Latino, Latina, Latinx, which is transgender and everything else in between, queer activism in America, transgenderism and classic work, sex work. Now, I thought that meant prostitution, but I guess you can clean that up.
How do you clean that up?
Clean that. We'll call it sex work, not prostitution.
Well, my question is sexual politics. I mean, does it have to do with like Katie Hill, Bill Clinton, Randy Duke Cunningham? No, he wasn't that, but Mark Foley. You know, I'm confused about that completely.
Well, most of this has to do with oppression, and these classes you take them. If you weren't oppressed or didn't know you were oppressed, but after you take them, you think you were oppressed. A lot of these there's a leftist indoctrination classes, which lends to a certain political party, which we all know starts with a D.
Yeah. It ain't declined to state, folks.
It's not declined to state. Yeah, but these bureaucracies are massive. They go on and on and on, and they grow, of course, obviously. There are 14 professors in the Cal Cultural Studies Department. It grows like a weed.
Oh, it does, yeah.
And all bureaucracies grow, that's what they do, but in government's even worse because there's no market forces involved. It's all tax money.
No, and here's one good thing to be thankful for. I didn't tell you about this one beforehand. I found this story that I forgot to email to you guys earlier this week. It's from the California Globe. The headline is, California leads the way in building new stadiums and arenas by not using taxpayer money. Because so many states, even purple states and red states, have donations, or the government is funding these stadiums, and many of them never get paid off, even after they're long gone, either bulldozed or imploded. So that is one good thing about California, that we're not being suckered into paying for these stadiums. Well, that's it for Radio Free Los Angeles this week. I'm Josh Jacobs, in for Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson. Juan Thierra, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you next week. And if you want to go to our website to help support school choice, it's californiaschoolchoice.org. That's californiaschoolchoice.org. I'm Josh Jacobs. Keep your mind on the things above, and as you hit that open road, don't be a slowdown spectator. We'll talk to you next week. Radio Free Los Angeles.